Hey everybody, I'm Jenna Gage, and this is Life Take Two, where I share my harrowing escape from Mormon trad wife life. I am wearing my custom designed "A Man Is Not a Plan" t-shirt today for a purpose. Let's dive into it. But first, I want to start off with a thank you for all of the feedback and stories and tips that I hear from all of you. My very favorite part of making content is engaging with the world. There was a time in life when I felt very alone and very isolated in my journey out of domestic violence, out of the Mormon church, and rebuilding a life for myself and my kiddos. And when I started to hear from you, I realized I'm not alone. We're all in this together and we all have something to learn from one another. So please keep the comments and stories coming. I don't always have time to type a big reply, but I read, as far as I know, every comment on my page. And if you like me just the teensiest little bit, will you hit that subscribe button for me? And if you'd like to read some of the articles that I'm referencing, I'm on Substack as Life Take Two. The series that I'm working on is Churchified. I usually have a link in the description. About 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to participate in a Zoom panel discussion with a bunch of men, all men, and then myself and a family law attorney. The topic of conversation was, why don't you pay your alimony, child support, and whatever other court ordered uh, things people are supposed to pay? There were some medical expenses and other things included in that. Why don't you pay? I have to say, first of all, that 90 minutes on that Zoom were some of the most triggering moments of my life all month. And I came away with some clarity on things that I really want to share with you. I wish that I could have recorded and broadcast the whole entire thing, but I can't. I do have permission though to share some of, and here's what I want you to know. This group of men was all kinds of demographics, from people who really struggle financially to people who are extremely well off by all measures. And length of marriage was at least 5 years. There were a couple of men that were several decades of marriage. And in every event, there was a spouse and children who were still financially dependent. So either the woman had been underemployed during her marriage, she just worked part time or took time off to have kids, or she had never worked, like being a stay at home mom, like myself, and children that were still minors. And ladies, here's what I want to tell you: men hate us. It didn't matter how many children, how dependent the children were on the money necessary for their survival. It didn't matter if they'd had a good marriage or a bad marriage. It didn't matter if they had loved each other during the marriage. It didn't matter if he had ended the marriage or she had ended the marriage. It didn't even matter if they were on good terms. There wasn't a single man on our panel who felt like it was his responsibility to continue to support his wife and or children after the marriage ended. The biggest theme that we heard in the conversation was resentment, pure, raw, dark, evil resentment, to the point that there was so much hatred against ex-wives that I hadn't anticipated hearing, that it kind of blindsided me. Men, even who had said that they had had happy marriages, even that they had agreed to the divorce or wanted the divorce or been the ones who had left, who resented the fact that they had had to work and provide for this woman and these children to begin with. A lot of conversations about, I bought her house and her cars and her food, and I paid for all the little sports and gymnastics and all the clothes and family vacations for 15 years or 8 years or 20 years. And it pissed me off then. And I'm even more pissed about it now. Another big theme was, now that it's over, the wife and the children are not my responsibility. If they're at my house on my time, sure, I'm going to buy them food and I might take them to buy a new pair of shoes or something. But when they're on her time, that is her financial responsibility. A lot of separation between my time and her time. As we kind of dove into that a little bit more and explored the idea of, you are still a family, even though there is a divorce that severs the couple, the men just could not get on board with that. They're like, my family ended the day I signed the divorce papers. And they literally saw themselves as only a family when they were together on his terms, under his control, under his roof, driving in his car. It was almost as if the family didn't exist outside of his front. One thing that surprised me considerably was conversations around punishment. So we had some specific questions with some of these men who haven't paid child support and are grossly in arrears. And so there are children that are doing without. And how do you feel about your children going through that? Do you not see that as your responsibility? What motivates you to continue not to pay child support when you do have the money to pay child support? And a lot of men expressed that it made her look bad, it made her mad, and they almost just liked being able to push her buttons and control her remotely by making sure that her and the children suffer. Several statements around, well, she gets what she deserves, with specific instances of a big story about somebody who did something at some kid's birthday party that made the dad not be able to be there. So she gets what she deserves. Now I've gone 3 years without providing any of the court ordered support. There was a lot of really one or the other, like option A or option B type of conversation that went like this. Well, I can take care of the kids, but then they're going to be at my house on my terms, under my control, and she's going to abide by everything that I want, or I'm not going to take care of the kids. She could stay married and then she'd be taken care of, or she can divorce me and leave and literally be on food stamps, poverty stricken, 3 kids piled up in one little studio. And as we discussed with some of these men, well, could there be a middle ground? As we discussed the middle ground, like what if you have a little bit more feedback into their daily schedules through a court app like Court Wizard, where you're able to feel like you're part of their lives, even on the days that they're with her? What if you guys have a once a month planning meeting where you feel like you are more involved in that way? What if we do something else? We found the polarization actually became stronger. Like, nope, I would never do that. And then now I definitely don't want to provide any financial subsistence for anything. They became madder as we discussed any type of negotiation or middle ground. And the biggest, most polarizing topic that we heard was the end of the marriage. And that was the biggest either or. She could have stayed married to me. She was happy. She was fine. And if she's not going to stay married to me, then she doesn't get any of the stuff. She doesn't get any of the benefits. She doesn't get to have her rent paid. She doesn't get to split the house and be able to provide for herself in the future. Either stay married or that's it. You're out there on your own. You're somebody else's problem. The new guy can take care of her. And again, as we dove into this conversation, it didn't matter if the man had ended the marriage. Like, you ended it. You've already said that you left for the other woman, or you wanted to take that job across country and she didn't want to go. So you guys decided very civilly to divorce. She could have stayed married, was the response by most men in every circumstance. Last theme that we heard a lot was she can figure it out. Even if the wife had no education, had no career, had no resources, no money, no means to go back to school, pay for childcare, and provide for herself moving forward in the future. Even in one case where the wife was 64 years old and had never worked, they had gotten married right after high school for religious and cultural reasons. She had been a stay at home mom and raised their 3 children. Even in that case, the husband, who had had a long, successful career and had all of the retirement and all of everything, said, she can figure it out. That's her job. In general, this wasn't spoken, but this was one of my big takeaways. If you are not the woman who's cooking his food and living in his house and making everything perfect and then sleeping with him and going on vacation with him, men do not think that you deserve one penny of their money, no matter how many years you've been married, no matter how much you invested in the relationship, no matter how much you brought into the marriage financially, no matter how many kids you have, and no matter how much those children require their father's support. If y'all aren't going to bed at night, they don't think you deserve anything. So I have said for many years that we need to just eliminate alimony completely from our system. And I have a lot of women who think that that's ridiculous. But having gone through my divorce, where I ended up with absolutely nothing, was sleeping in my car, am still financially challenged 6 years after the end of the marriage, after 24 years as a stay-at-home mom, I think that alimony enables women to make poor decisions and men to abuse and misuse their ex-wives. And if we were really addressing this question in a totally blank slate, if we didn't already have alimony on the table and we were just brainstorming, hey, what would be a good way to take care of wives and mothers post divorce? If somebody threw out there, hey, I know, let's make them financially dependent on the ex husband who hates them, who resents having to ever like work his ass off every single day to provide for his family to begin with. Let's have her dependent on him for the rest of her life. We would all just like, oh my God, that's the worst idea ever. And whoever came up with that would probably kick them out of the brainstorming group. But that's what we have in America. We have women across the country today who are doing without, whose children are living in poverty, who are having a very difficult time rebuilding their lives and will never, ever catch up economically with the men because they entered marriages on the assumption collectively as a society that should that marriage fail, oh, he's just going to pay alimony. So you can go back to school and suddenly step into the workforce at age 30, 40, 50, 64. It's a terrible idea. It's a terrible model. And after hearing these men talk, I am more committed than ever to warning young women that a man is absolutely not a plan. So, what's a girl to do? Let me give you a little bit of the advice that I teach in my Man Proof Your Life classes and with private clients. Number one, if you're going to be a stay at home mom for any period of time, 9 months, 3 years, the 24 years that I invested, don't do that without a spousal trust. Super simple to do. You'll need to talk to an attorney to designate an account as exclusively yours and designate an amount of money that your working spouse is going to pay into that trust fund every single month. Here's a little bit of simple math. If my husband had just put $250 a month into a spousal trust when our marriage collapsed at 24 years and he abandoned our family, I would have had $72,000 in the bank. I recommend an amount more between $400 and $600 a month, which if I had had that in the bank, this whole entire channel wouldn't exist. None of my story would be here. I wouldn't have just signed on a movie and my life would have been a lot easier and happier. And of course, no marriage before age 25, no children before the completion of whatever career training you're going to do and being established in that career with a little bit of work history so that you can tap back into that network after your children go off to school, and no completely stepping out of the workforce ever. We're grown adults and no grown adult should ever be financially dependent on another grown adult. This isn't just my opinion. This is what the data shows. 50% of marriages end in divorce. You have a 50% chance that that romantic partner is no longer going to be in your life, so plan accordingly. 57% of married men say that they will cheat. 1 in every 3 women will be in a domestic violence situation. By the way, women who have their own financial resources don't stay in domestic violence. There is a very small percentage of them who ever do. The number one risk factor for domestic violence is financial dependence on your partner. The number one cause of death of pregnant women is intimate partner homicide. 80% of stay-at-home moms have zero retirement, which is why elderly females are our highest poverty demographic in the country. Because if their husbands decease or divorce, they're left with absolutely nothing. I have a lot of people who come on my channel and say, well, you're just married about apple and there's a bunch of bad guys out there that all the girls are getting mixed up with. You don't know what type of apple you're biting into at the wedding. You have absolutely no idea. And pay attention to this. If I had followed my own Man Proof Your Life program and still married Jake, who is mentally ill and was a 24-year brutally violent abuser, my life on the other side would have been very different. I would have been able to walk away and protect myself and my children. And if everything had still ended the same way it did 24 years in, my life today would be completely financially different. Even if he had been the same stinky, horrible person, if I had just tweaked things just a little bit, ladies. That's all we got to do. We got to tweak things just a little bit. If you are planning a Christmas wedding or you just got engaged and you're doing a Hawaiian getaway wedding with your friends, the most important thing to plan is not the color scheme. It is not the decor. It is not the bridesmaids' dresses. It is the financial protections for yourself stepping into that relationship. Every woman is one man away from destroying her life. Now, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you are a divorced man, do you or do you not pay child support? 40% of child support is all that gets paid in the United States of America. Less than 17% of spousal maintenance ever gets paid, ever. Do you pay? If so, what motivates you? If not, what are your excuses? And ladies, what are you doing to financially protect yourself? And if you've gone through a rotten experience like me, do share in the comments so that all of us girls can learn from you.